Um, we're a few people, I think, are still coming in. So I was just wondering, what unites us here, what brings us here, so I want to be really respectful of, us bringing our own intentions and our own motivations and purposes here, and also, this empathy thing. So are we building a culture of empathy here? So we're here to build a culture of empathy. And I would love to know more about what that means for all of us. So that's part of my exploration here. So as we're doing that here, let's begin with check-ins. So for check-ins, the invitation is to let us know where you are. Something from last time, something from the empathy buddy call that you had during the week, or from cycling practice during the week. I can start. Feeling glad to be here, feeling nervous, feeling excited, and empathy. I think this is my first empathy circle during the week. Had an empathy call with Julia, which was great, and looking forward to being back with all of you. I will pass to who's been here for a while. Graham.
Thank you, Ben. I'm thinking about intentions. I'm excited to be here, but I'm challenged by carrying out those intentions, and so I have a lot to learn, and I look forward to today. My mind is a little bit preoccupied. I had a very, very good breakout room on Saturday. I know that is not relating to this group, but it was a fascinating breakout, a lot learned. And I've had a couple of empathy buddy sessions, and I thank those people. They know who they are. And I look forward to what happens today. Thank you.
Thanks, Graham. Pass to you, Lou.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. Happy to see everyone's faces. I had a wonderful buddy call with Eric this week, very connecting. And and I'm just really happy to be here. Look forward to doing the circles today and hearing what people are thinking about what they might do next, and how a culture of empathy relates to how you feel a culture of empathy is building maybe in your world. Yeah. Okay. That's me.
Thank you, Lou. Pass to Julia.
Thank you, Ben. So hello, everybody. I hope everyone's fine. I had last week my empathy call with Ben, which was really nice. I think we connected, and also the practice was a little bit different from the ones that I experienced so far. Like we did a little bit of meditation in the beginning, and it was really nice and appreciated. And today I'm very much looking forward to this last session to close the training, and very happy to be here.
Thanks, Julia. Eric?
Hello. Yeah, feeling a little sleepy, feeling a little preoccupied. But I had a fantastic conversation with Lou. It just felt really, really nice and clarifying also, kind of gradually getting more clarified on what I'm looking for, the types of people that I'm looking to connect with. So that's kind of been an emerging, kind of ongoing exploration for me of where am I looking to fit in the world, and what am I looking to bring at this point in my life.
Thanks, Eric. Kathy?
Yes. I woke up this morning thinking, I'm so glad I have empathy calls, because my life is a little crazy right now, and I can't imagine what I'd be like if I didn't have this. And my call was with Dean fun guy, and it was really wonderful to have that call. And oh yes, and so we're all so like-minded, resonating at a certain consciousness level, and so that really fills my soul cup also, to be getting to know everybody.
Thanks, Kathy. Sally.
I was supposed to have a buddy call with Joel, and I really want to find out what happened. But anyway, no problem. I had other empathy calls and focused on them, and yeah, I'm just accumulating the skills I need. So thank you.
Thanks, Ali. Prasanna?
Just for starters, not the best of health, have a strong headache. I want to be here. The sign of space will lighten me up. To share, highlight, of course, I shared the previous week that I was excited about my mama coming out into an external empathy circle. She did join one and she loved it. She's looking forward to more of the empathy circle. And I and my mama both are grateful to Ben because he was amazing. He was a facilitator in that empathy circle, and I was so happy that they both had that one-on-one time together for the whole process, and it was amazing for her. She was so excited after that. So that was a highlight for me. And I had a buddy call with Larry. That was wonderful. He's a guiding force. Thank you.
Thanks, Prasanna. Cynthia?
So I am really happy to be here today. I'm feeling sad that this is our last meeting of this cohort, but excited to join another one. I think any number of you who were here last week know that the things went very sideways for me last Monday. And so I was very happy to afterwards check in with Lou and with Edwin and with Bill, and unfortunately, Celine couldn't make our empathy buddy call, but she really wants to do that. And so we're going to do it tomorrow. So I had several great check-ins and expect another great check-in with Celine, and just thought through a lot how not only with this group, but in life, sometimes there can be a tear and repair kind of situation where, I mean, it's not that no one tore anything with me, but just the way the circle went very sideways. And for me, in a moment where I felt some disconnection, I just wanted to reconnect. And so I want to thank each of you who were willing to connect with me, and others who I knew very well I could check in with as well. And so it's just, you know, reconnecting and reestablishing has put me back in a space, of course, of excitement and joy to continue the empathy circle process.
Thank you, Cynthia. Mina?
Oh. Hi, everyone. Well, I'm feeling two things. One, I'm feeling grateful that I have this cohort, sort of ongoing cohort to constantly have empathy on my brain, to think about it, you know, at least once a week, and then I'm in the other one too, so twice a week, and then with our buddy calls, to kind of constantly it's in my mind. So as I'm going through things in my own personal life with family, friends, that I always kind of pause and think about how I can best react to things. So that's something I'm grateful for. But having said that, I've just been, you know, watching a little bit too much of the news and seeing what's happening in Afghanistan. It's just very troubling. And I'm thinking, how can we bring empathy there? How can I don't, you know, I feel just very conflicted about, I think, was it, I don't know, Cynthia, who just said tear and repair. And I think I'm just thinking about, it's been tearing and repairing for decades with Afghanistan. So anyway, that's the other thing that's on my mind right now.
Thanks, Mina. Edwin?
Yeah, I had multiple calls this week, as well as facilitating, our orientation intro cafe. The thing that's really kind of set with me was sort of the power of empathic listening. So if there is, if there's kind of, like Cynthia was saying, if there's tears or some kind of a sense of disconnection, how powerful empathy is to heal that, and just seeing the power of it, and how we need to have a sense of trust in that, knowing that that can heal, and then just seeing the time commitment of it. It takes a lot of time. It's like we really need somehow this to be more kind of ubiquitous, more time for this, for empathic listening. I'd love to see the politicians be modeling it, and just kind of, there's something I'm just sort of sensing. I guess there's a deeper set level of awareness that I just had this week, of just how important it is what we're doing. Yeah, that's it. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Edwin. Michelle?
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'm just checking in from Galway, and it's been a weird week, because we had a big event on Wednesday, and there'd been like a kind of a lot running up to that, and then I'd been kind of tired, and there'd been some triggers in that, and it came towards the weekend, and it was difficult. It was a difficult time, and then I found that I just seen the difference the empathy process made. For the last couple of weeks, I've had lots of support from Graham and buddy calls, and it's just brought me through that time. I wouldn't have made it through otherwise, and I'm really grateful for this week. We had a empty buddy call with Anna as well on there was an idea I had in mind for something that just having somebody listen to me and take that seriously just changed everything this morning, and I was really grateful for that. And I'm kind of realizing what a difference it makes, because normally I tend to bottle things up, and I'm realizing that actually I feel so much more emotionally available right now today because of having had all of that, I feel back to myself, and it's really a lot of gratitude for it.
Thanks, Michelle. Bill?
Well, I've had buddy calls. I forget with all the things who I talked to last. I know I talked to Cynthia. That was great. I guess, so I had an incident, I'll be very brief, but I had an incident where I was involved in trying to hold back a house fire before the fire department came. But it was a lesson in a culture of empathy for me, because people are all just kind of spontaneously gathering around. And so anyway, I'll share about more of that later as we go on. But really seeing how culture of empathy can work in do or die situations. Thanks.
Thanks, Bill. Ralph?
Hi. Most important to my life, but in the background when I've met with you for the last month, has been a family dynamic that's as fresh now as it was when it first erupted. And to have an empathy circle, someone needs to be receptive to it. And if brain chemistry trumps availability. So that's been on the back of my mind, and I have to remind myself to breathe, and I find refuge and strength in being in the empathy circle process. And I also don't want it to be somebody coined the term spiritual bypass, that I take this almost like like a narcotic to dull me to what I need to face first and center. But had great calls in this circle, great buddy call with Dominic and with Larry, and just the tip of the iceberg contacts. So onward.
Thanks, Ralph. Dominic.
Welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Yeah, I want to echo what Ralph said. I had a nice call with him this week. Yeah, I'll make this quick, I guess. I think like my external circumstances are nice right now, which is fantastic. But I'm like thinking about how I can empathize with myself as a student, because I'm like a perfectionist and I kind of beat myself up. And I have a test next week for grad school. So I'm like studying, I have like a few jobs. It's just kind of crazy work-wise. So I'm just trying to think about how to like not be too hard on myself, like in an empathy sense. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Dominic. Anne?
Yeah, for me, I think it's been like empathy full week. I've had cafes every day, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And it's been wonderful. And having a buddy call with Michelle this week was just inspiring, and gave me a lot of optimism, a lot of hope. And even better because a lot of my work is in Extinction Rebellion and it overlaps with that, so it makes it really exciting.
Thank you.
And I'm looking forward, I just say, just looking forward to this last session with you all, the new facilitators. I've missed a couple and I'm looking forward to getting to know you a bit more today.
Thanks, Anne. Larry?
Thanks, Ben. Had a wonderful buddy call with Prasanna. It was really beautiful. And then, you know, in honoring what Frank mentioned, what Ralph mentioned, and to not use empathy for a spiritual bypass, because when we turn on the news, here comes the Taliban. You know, here comes thousands of years of domination thinking marching back into Afghanistan. And then we change the channel and we're facing potential extinction. And that's reality. We can't spiritual bypass reality. But there's one thing I'd really like to celebrate, and it's what Prasanna mentioned today. And Prasanna, if you could turn on your camera for just a second, I'd really like to celebrate. Your mom is doing empathy circles. Wow, what a celebration. Your mom is doing empathy circles. Awesome. Wow, I wish we could only say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Joelle?
Hey, everybody. I really apologize about being late. I know that can kind of interrupt the process, but I just so much still wanted to make it to be here with you. Yeah, I'm also just noticing how when I allow others to be empathetic to me, there's something in the healing process that shifts things so that I just noticed some things this week in shifts of my capacity to be empathetic to others, so that this I'm just realizing how self-empathy and allowing empathy for ourselves grows the other empathy, and how helpful that's been to me. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Joelle. Lou, feedback.
Yeah, thanks. I'm so inspired by the sharing. Yeah, so this is the time when one of the trainers provides feedback, answers questions that were posted on the feedback forms, or questions that were raised in the sharing this morning. And so there was a question in the feedback form, actually not from this week, but it was from last time, about how does a trainer respond, or how does a facilitator respond when someone objects to the empathy circle process? And I had a strong experience of this once, where I sat down. It was an empathy cafe, and it was in person, and different groups were put together at different tables, and I was involved with organizing it, so I wasn't sitting at my table. And so I went over to my table to sit down with the group I was facilitating, and they said, so we've all discussed it, and we don't want to use the process that you guys are doing. So that was like the strongest objection that I've ever had. But typically the objections to the process are, like, I want a more natural flow of conversation. I don't, all this like timing and stopping and, and the reflecting, it's too, I want to hear from everyone in the group about what I'm saying. And I want a more natural flow of conversation. Or some people object to being timed. And I think the way to respond as a facilitator is first to try to understand their objection. Why are they having difficulty with it? Or maybe reflect what you think you're hearing in what they're saying. So if someone said, well, I just don't like the whole process, then trying to find out more specifically what the problem is. But if someone says, well, I want a more natural flow of conversation, or I don't like having myself timed, I usually respond with why the structure is the way that it is, what kind of value of a culture of empathy we're holding by having that piece of structure. So the reason we have timed turns is so that there's mutuality in people having a chance to share. What happens in normal conversation is the people who are very verbal talk a lot, and the people who are less verbal or shy don't talk at all. And so you have a lot of disparity in how much people talk in a group. And so the structure provides mutuality, and that's a really important value. And then the second is, another one is that everyone be heard to their satisfaction. So, and how rare that is in normal conversation. And that the reason for the reflector just doing, just reflecting what the person said, not any of the other things, is because those other things, and Edwin says this in his intro, those other things take the person away from their inner journey of sharing what is going on for them. And if people, and acknowledging, yes, that's different, and it's strange, and it may feel strange. And please experiment by trying it, and see what happens. Consider this evening an experiment, and see what happens when we do this. I think you'll find that there's like some bit of magic that happens if you just sit and listen to someone. And that almost happens for everyone that I've been in a circle with, even the people who have objected. Mostly the people who object, by the end of the evening, they say something like, I thought I was a good listener, and I realize I'm not. I need to learn a lot about listening. That's often what happens. I'm trying to think of the other kind of objections that people have. Those are the main ones. And again, any other one that happens, again, the way that I respond is to say why we do it the way we do, what kind of value we're holding by doing that, and then asking them to experiment with having a chance to experience that. And we can check in later to see how it was for you at the end. So that's that. Just a couple other comments I wanted to make about things things that people shared this morning. What Cynthia shared about disconnects, tears and repairs, I just want to say how important it is that you did that work, Cynthia, of connecting with people and engaging with them in empathic listening to repair the disconnect that you had. So often that does not happen. So our normal pattern in life for most people, because we don't know a lot about how to reconnect with people when there's a disconnect, is we usually go complain to somebody else about how wrong that person was and how unjustified it was and how terrible they are and how hurt I am. And of course, what needs to happen is the person that you had the disconnect with, they need to hear how it was for you, and then you need to hear how it was for them. And so that process of listening to each other, which when there's a lot of conflict often takes a third person, so it's very difficult to do that two people just alone, but you have a third person facilitating who's holding the process, making sure people listen to each other, and who is maybe providing, like a facilitator, providing reflection when somebody has difficulty actually doing the reflection because of the emotional charge they're feeling. And that's kind of doing conflict resolution, and maybe in the facilitator support group, because we don't really have time to deal with that in the regular training. In the facilitator support group, we could do that as a topic one session or more, how to deal with conflict. Yeah, what time is it? 7:27. I'll just make a couple more comments. So one is about self-empathy, which Dominic and Joelle mentioned. And I just want, so the process of empathic listening to someone else, the process of doing that for yourself, being able to do it for yourself when you have an inner critic screaming at you, or you have something that's happened that's traumatic for you or upsetting for you, and you don't have someone to listen to you, being able to listen to yourself, to take some time and just have empathy for yourself for what you are suffering. That is a really powerful tool that you always have with you. You don't need another person to do it. And you may not always have the capacity to do it. Sometimes life is just overwhelming and you don't have the capacity to give yourself empathy. And that's where it's good to have an empathy buddy. We have the calls, but having someone that you can call and talk to, having a relationship like that is a really valuable thing. Okay, and the last thing I want to say is about what Ralph said about, in order to have an empathy circle, you have to have people who are willing to have an empathy circle, who are available to do that. And the comment I want to make about that is just that I used to think that I wanted the world to be more empathic, and that I wished other people would be more empathic. And I realized at some point that, well, I could create that world by being more empathic myself, and not waiting for other people to do it or wish other people would do it. So I can, and by being empathic myself, I mean saying what's going on for me, in a kind of honest, vulnerable way, not talking about them, not criticizing them, and telling them what I think of them, but telling them how it is for me, what's going on for me, and what's important to me. I can always do that. And that's creating, that creates an openness for understanding and for intimacy. Now, whether the other person takes it or not, yes, you can't control that, but you can create openings for it by how you express yourself. So I just wanted to say that. Okay, so then I'm handing it to, is it Dominic? Yeah, go ahead, Dominic.
Yeah, thank you, Lou. First, I'm seeing the chat. Did we skip you, Dean, for the check-ins?
I did a check-in before we started the recording, but for those that weren't here, there's been a bit of trauma in Plymouth, and it's shaken us all up a bit. 5 innocents killed and a 3-year-old child. So there's been lots of candlelight vigils all around the city. A beautiful thing happened round the corner from me. There's this giant mural that was commissioned by a charity that I'm part of, and the guy whose house it's on actually added 5 green hearts and Plymouth Together as a hashtag underneath, and that had a point of rallying the community together, and it had quite a bit of a social media impact as well. So it's nice to know that people still have capacity, even in these times of troubles, for each other to reach out. That's my check-in. Thank you.
Sweet. Thank you, Dean. So the good news for today is it's just a regular empathy circle. I'm posting the prompt. Oh, Edmund got it. So it's, let me see. This is just an empathy circle. This circle is for integrating your experiences and learnings, also for harvesting feedback about the benefits of the training. We'd also like to hear what you will do next with empathy circle practice and training. So we have an hour and 14 minutes it'll be to the next 45 minutes. We're trying to have 45 minutes of debrief. So we have plenty of time. There'll be 4 or 5 minute turns, and we will be facilitating. I think it's Michelle, Ben, Larry, and myself, I think, are in the 4 groups. Yeah, I think that covers everything.
Okay, great. Then we're ready to go into the rooms. Some of the rooms have 5 people, and if you're 5 in a group, you may want to do 4-minute turns, 3 groups of 5 and 1 group of 4. And I'll send a notice about 10 minutes before closing the rooms. Hopefully I'll remember. So here we go. See you there. Oh, close out. Did I open the room? Close all rooms. That's it. I'm here with you, Dominic.
I'm back. Sorry, I had to run to the bathroom super quick. Do we have
Larry and Mina should be going to the other rooms. So Larry, you're in another room. There he goes. This spot, yeah.
Okay, what's up, everyone? How's it going? I've been in a circle with everyone except for Eric, so welcome, man. Excited to get to know you. All time, so I'll do, got hour and 12 minutes, 72 minutes. Can't do that quick math. I'll just make it 5 minutes for everyone. And everyone knows what to do, so I can be the first listener. So we want to be the first speaker. Nope. Ralph, okay. I think you're muted.
Starting?
Yes, whenever you're ready.
So I am preoccupied with wanting to have empathy circles, empathy dialogues, and it's not the other person or persons are incapable of participating as anyone in this group would be able to.
Okay, so I hear you're preoccupied with having an empathy circle or dialogue with a person or persons who seems to be not as able to partake in them as we are. Is that right?
Exactly. And it's the reality of brain chemistry. Somebody who's not only producing their narrative, but producing my narrative and projecting it between us. So there's not a way to get an edge in word-wise.
So yeah, I hear it's a matter of brain chemistry where the other person is creating their own narrative and your narrative and kind of projecting that between you two. So there's no way to get an edge in word-wise, as you say.
So it requires the most exquisite and determined motivation on my part to be present, so that there may be slight openings. It's not, and I hope that the person who used to be is somewhere inside there who can acknowledge what's going on. So I need to be continuously present.
Yeah, I hear it takes a lot of motivation and determination to establish a dialogue with this person. And you see little openings where you can kind of say something. And so there's a little hope. And I hear you say, hope that the person that once was is still there and that you can establish this dialogue again. I think I might have missed something.
That's essentially it. And I find that without my trying to, this has a pervasive global effect on myself. It makes me I'm find myself sometimes just tight as a bowstring, and careful not to snap. So it's kind of sometimes an agonizing presence.
Mm-hmm. So I hear, so I hear it's kind of a pervasive global effect when you engage in this dialogue, and that sometimes you're as tight as a bowstring, as you say, and you have to be careful not to snap, and that it's a bit agonizing to have this sort of interaction. Edwin,
and wait, pause for a second. Justine,
Yeah.
Is it Anne dropped out of your room? You were supposed to be 4 in a room. Are you?
Yeah, we're down to 3. We're asking if anyone else wants to come from another room to the 3. That's all. I'll go back to the other room.
Okay, I can. Does anybody want to go over to that room? I can always join too. Okay.
I can go also.
All right, I'll move you over there.
Okay, Ralph, you got 1 minute and 20 seconds left. Thank you, Julia, for stepping up as well.
Did somebody go to the other room?
Julia
Edwin's
volunteered to go. Yeah, the other room, Anne seems to. Oh no, now she's back. I don't know. There's a little confusion. I don't know. Sorry. Well, anyway, they're four to a room now. Something happened. Sorry about that interruption.
Okay, it's all good.
So, this is the men's group anyway.
Yeah. Whenever you're ready.
No comments, Edwin. You're silent listener. So I'm speaking about something which is very much extreme. So close on that reality. Now I'm thinking of answering my assignment, what's going on in the future. Well, that has a lot to do with politicians. And I find that politicians of all levels, maybe they don't have a diagnosis, but there's something as strong as brain chemistry, the power of the addiction to their delusions.
Mm-hmm. So first, I hear you reminding Edwin that silent listeners can't make a comment. And then I hear you closing off the first topic by saying it's kind of a serious, more serious note. And then you're moving on to the assignment, which is the future for empathy. And I hear you talking about politicians and that you're not giving them a diagnosis, but it's as strong as brain chemistry in that they're trying to keep up the delusion, the ego story, I think. And that actually is your time, unfortunately. Thanks, Ralph.
I felt heard.
Awesome, great. So now I'm the speaker. It's Eric. Will you listen for me?
Absolutely.
Dope, thanks. What are your most valuable learnings? I'll just start and ramble. Okay. Well, I always think about my family when I think about like the value of this exercise. Because I'm 23, I've had a younger brother for 20 of those years, and we fight so much. It's insane. But I realized that like I just kind of like what Ralph was saying, I kind of project a narrative into what my brother is thinking, and a lot of times it's false.
So when you think about the value of this practice, you think of your family, and particularly your younger brother. Like you fight a lot with your younger brother, he's a few years younger than you, and you recognize, kind of like Ralph was saying, you create a story and kind of project it onto your brother.
Yeah, exactly. And then like, it's like I have this false narrative that I know my family, like I can read their minds, but they always surprise me when I really like open up and like listen without judgment. And yeah, so I think about family a lot with this thing. My mom is like curious about trying this, and like I was hesitant. I was like, I don't know. I just feel like it'd be like I kind of want to keep this away from her in my own life, but it would be good for her to actually go through the practice herself. So it's like this balance of my own boundaries, but also it would help her.
Yeah. So yeah, you think about your family a lot with this. You have a sense of I'm sorry, my roommate's starting to act up. you have a sense that you know your family, or you think but you're realizing, or you recognize that it may be a false narrative, that they actually surprise you every time that they open up. And you were also talking about your mom, where it's like there's kind of a tension point. One, she's interested in being involved with this practice with you, and a part of you wants to kind of hold the boundary and say like, no, I want this to be separate. And another part recognizes the value that would have for her, and possibly even for you, for her to get more involved with this practice.
Exactly. And then moving on to like my dad, who's like, classic like boomer type of guy who doesn't think about emotions. He's very like, oh, I'm a masculine man, but he's, not really. I just assume like therapy and psychology is like, I would never think he would even be curious about it. But I hear him talking about trauma with my mom, and like, it's just like recently has blown my mind that, maybe these stories I have in my head are just kind of, they're too fixed, and they're not accurate anymore.
Yeah. So you also think about your dad, who you perceive as kind of like a classic boomer, kind of masculine, like where don't think that he would be interested in therapy or any of this kind of softer skill type stuff. But at the same time, you hear him talk about trauma with your mom. And so again, it's this sense of like, oh, these stories that you have of your family, there may be space for them to be updated, or they might actually be false narratives that you have of your family.
Absolutely. So then I get to think about what the false narratives I have about myself too, and just then going to self-empathy. And like, I have a lot of perfectionism, and I think there's a thread of Asian culture that breeds that I've been thinking about a lot, but kind of breaking out of that and self-empathy, and just like wondering, since I'm 23, kind of figuring out what path I'm going down a path, but like kind of being open to kind of reevaluating that and stepping away from the narratives of my family and kind of trying to chart my own path that way.
Yeah, so it brings you down to even reflecting on yourself, and like, what kind of false narratives do you have about yourself? So as you perceive yourself as having this thread of like perfectionism, and there might be like even a cultural kind of like thread that impacts that. But you're kind of giving yourself more space to open up and say, okay, where can I step away from the stories that I thought about myself, and like, where's my path actually opening up into?
Yes. Great listening skills. Feel heard. I'm trying to think of what else. Just because I'm trying to become like a therapist, so like I'm learning more about like, you can't help anyone if you don't help yourself first and stuff. So there's another tension point of like, I feel like it's a little it's not true, but it feels a little selfish to take care of myself, right? But I have to kind of rework that and say like, oh, if I don't do that, I can't help anyone else. So there's the tension point as well.
Yeah. So first I heard you say great listening skills and you felt heard. But another kind of like narrative or story that you have that you're kind of re-examining, there's almost like a little bit of a guilt or like a sense of like judgment about taking care of yourself. But simultaneously, you also recognize the reality of like, you can't help other people unless you help yourself. So if it feels selfish in a way, but you want to become a therapist, or you're training to become a therapist, and you're recognizing that actually taking care of yourself is a way that you can be more equipped to help other people.
Thank you. I feel fully heard. That was
awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Okay, let me get back to my gallery view. And Edwin, would you be willing to listen?
Yep. Listening.
All right, let me pull up the prompts here. So one thing that I really value about this practice, the Empathy Circle specifically, as I've experienced them, is like what I would call maybe like lightweight structure. So I'm really like a giant believer in structure, like very sophisticated structure, very, very like well-designed intentional structure. I think it possibly can resolve 80% of like human conflict and like suffering.
So you're a real believer in structure, kind of really well-designed structure. And you think that through that structure, a lot of conflict can be resolved. And there's something about lightweight structure, maybe referring to the empathy circle being sort of a simple, lightweight structure.
Yeah. 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 It's been something I actually, it was like my first sense in the first class. I was like, this should be more complicated or something. It's like I was expecting like more training or complexity or theory or something. I was like, oh, they're just gonna put us right in and like do it. And then it wasn't until somebody reflected, it's like, this is in part by design. And I was like, oh, that actually makes a lot of sense. Just like kind of get it right out and get people. Yeah, so that lightweight nature of it. In part, I'm always looking for scale. So yeah, I quickly turned around and kind of like have appreciated it a lot more than I did at the very first glance.
So to begin with, you thought there'd be kind of more structure, maybe more didactic material, and here you're just jumping right into it and you're wondering what was going on. But as time's gone on, you started to really appreciate the jumping in part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And as far as like moving forward, I feel like I've said it almost every check-in, but it's like, man, I really do have kind of like a deep yearning to just apply more like life-bringing systems, processes, structure is another way to say it, like the structure processes that increase the chances of like life flowing and life connecting, like that kind of sacred connections, applying those pretty much as quickly as possible to my local community, and then like gradually expanding out from there.
So you're going forward, you'd like to create structures around your community that are sort of life forming. So it sounds like constructive, positive structures in your community is kind of like where you'd like to put your energies into.
Yeah. Yeah. And on one hand, it feels really like very simple to implement those types of things, and my neighborhood is real. There's a lot of like vibrancy, there's a lot of conflict, but there's like a lot of like energy flowing, which I perceive as like a high potential to implement things that people will appreciate. And it feels simple on one hand. On another hand, it's been 2 years now and I'm still trying to like scrape together like the people who believe kind of the same, where I'm like, we're hitting the same problems over and over and over, and we're having these, we're just saying, oh, well, they're the problem, so let's just like cut them off and like continue moving down. And I'm like, come on.
Yeah, so in your community, there's a lot of energy. Sounds like you're wanting to kind of get something started there, trying to find people who will work together. And sounds like a lot of people just want to cut off the people who they think are sort of the problem people. And you'd like to, it looks like more of an inclusive, constructive way forward, maybe feeling some frustration that you spent 2 years on this and it's kind of not coming together.
Yeah. It has been revealing. Like I've been in a process of getting more and more clear on how deeply held it is for me, this idea of the shorthand I have from it, the phrase I use is from a therapeutic model called Internal Family Systems, which is, it just says no bad parts, is like kind of like there's no one bad out there, there's no one bad in here, and community building and community organizing from that place is like all I want to do. And I think, again, circling back around, like systems, like sophisticated, life-bringing, constructive systems just increase the likelihood of us connecting with what I think is the deepest truth of ourselves, instead of going way off to this, like, a bad look and an unthoughtful word, then like pulls us way over in this direction.
So at the core, you want to include everyone, kind of not see bad parts of people, and that the foundation is really create systems that are sort of life supporting, constructive systems. And that are totally inclusive. If you can just create those good systems, it'll create a positive, direction for the community.
Yeah. Thank you, Evan.
Okay. Then speak to Ralph. Yeah, I resonate with what Eric is saying, that to not be cutting people off. You're saying, oh, they're the bad people, if we just get rid of them. In fact, when Occupy Wall Street happened, it was like the 99 against the 1%. And I took the empathy tent there and said 100% empathy, which is exactly addressing that attitude. Was, we got to include everybody, even the 1%, because if you chop the 1%'s head off, there's another 1% and another 1%, another 1%. So you just keep chopping heads off till you're kind of there by yourself. Yeah.
If I could feedback, you resonate with what Eric is saying, that there are no bad parts. And to illustrate this, during Occupy, the slogan was the 1% versus the 99%, and you went there with the 100%, because if you get rid of that 1%, another elite will come up at the top.
Exactly. In fact, the tent was a big, 10 by 10 empathy tent. It said 100% empathy. So, because it was right on the mark, because, so it has to be a systems. And I appreciate that systems mindset, because that's what the empathy circle is. It's sort of the minimal viable structure, right? It's like, what's the minimal viable structure to keep things, coherent? And it seems to me that, in fact, that's how the Empathy Circle got developed, was from my experience at Occupy Wall Street. I'll go into that in a minute.
So the Empathy Circles actually started with your experience at Occupy Wall Street, and you've come to design a practice which is systemic, that has the fewest working parts to still have a system.
The minimal viable structure, so it's like, what's the minimal viable thing that will really work? And my sense at Occupy was, I did like these other circle processes, and they had a lot of problems. And the idea was, and there was a lot of problems at Occupy here in Berkeley. I just thought, what if we did small circles? Everybody was doing small empathy circles. And then, you do it for a couple hours and you mix people up, instead of having these, general assemblies, and because there's so much manipulation, who gets to speak and stuff like that. So it was kind of, and I wasn't able to implement it there because they closed down the camp, the police did. But it was the idea of a lot of little circles, people practicing, getting a lot of practice, and then mixing, keep mixing with others in these circles, instead of one big sort of top-down sort of approach.
At Occupy, which was finally shut down by the police, there were attempts to create heartfelt dialogue, but they didn't go as far as you thought that they could, owing to politics and ego getting involved, whatever. So you thought, what if we had smaller pods of people, and they would be able to fully express themselves, and then shift around and be in other groups, and that would do the trick.
Yeah, and you have a lot of participation. So that's what I'm thinking for community, is like everybody's participating in this thing where you're an observer listening to the people pontificate, I think is sort of a problem. So I'm very much get into the small group, mutual, participation, like we're doing here. So anyway, those are all ideas, just building on what Eric was saying.
Mm-hmm. For you, the rubber really meets the road when people actually have these intimate occasions to fully express themselves, rather than being passive observers in a much larger group where they don't input.
Yeah, and then you're also practicing. It's like, I think this empathic listening needs practice. We're continuously rewiring our brain to be listening, because it's just like exercise, metaphor. It's like exercise. You can read about exercise, you can have people pontificate about exercise, exhort you to have exercise. You can think about exercise, but you got to do the exercise, right? You got to get out there and lift those weights or go running. And the empathy circle is that exercise, you know. So you can kind of skip pretty much everything else if you can just do the exercise.
The important thing is to actually do it, and rather than do a more abstract intellectual approach. Do it and do it and do it.
That's it. Yeah, I feel that's good. Do it, do it, do it. I feel fully heard. Yeah, thanks.
I listened, so I speak. Well, yeah. Okay, so I want to speak to you, Dominic.
I thought you meant you listen now, but yeah, you're right. You're right.
Well, there's a lot going on, and I always want to take notes and then go back and develop the notes into a essay or a mini essay as I focus. This is the time that I'm drawing back the bow and aiming, and I don't want to release the arrow prematurely.
So I hear that there's a lot of times when you want to take notes and turn them into essays and like formulate these ideas based on the experiences you have, and the metaphors like pulling back the bow, but you don't want to release it too early.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm understanding empathy circles as not the only thing in the world, but the term comes crucible for the values and actions I wish to see happen in the world.
Okay, so you acknowledge that empathy circles aren't the only thing that exists in the world, but the term crucible comes up for it to represent the values and actions that you would like to see in the world, like put together.
Yes, and I noticed that if I start by saying to somebody, oh, I found this new thing, empathy circles, you got to do it, rather than putting that in the larger context, which is we all want a peaceful world. We all want to be in peace with ourselves. I know that you are an empathic person, and you're committed to putting your values into action. That's how I need to start things.
Okay, so I hear you saying, instead of going up to someone and saying, this is empathy circles, you should try it. I hear you're reevaluating it and saying, like, connecting it to them and their values and saying, like, you're an empathetic person. You want the world to be seen a certain way, and kind of approach it by connecting to their core values, right?
Yes, rather than say, I do TM, I do yoga, I do the nonviolent communication, whatever it is, and you ought to do it too. I see those things having value, but the larger context is the very bold vision of creating a culture of empathy. And the way to empathy, there's no way to empathy. Empathy is the way.
Mm-hmm. So here you're saying, like, another way to do it is like saying, I do TM, I do yoga, I do nonviolent communication, so you should too. But that kind of approaching it as like building a culture of empathy is the way to do it, because there's a lot of value in those things, but missing the last part. Sorry, I missed the last sentence. Oh, no, there's no way to do empathy. Empathy is the way.
That's probably the most critical thing I had to say, and it just occurred to me. And this comes also out of other places, such as famously Thich Nhat Hanh saying, "There's no way to peace. Peace is the way," and that puts an inarguable demand on a person to be peaceful. If I would like people that I'm with to be peaceful. Similar with empathy.
Yeah. So I hear that, like, the most critical piece of what you're saying is that quote, like, there's no way to be empathetic. Empathy is the way. And I hear you relate it to someone's name I missed, but the quote is, there's no way to peace, peace is the way. And that it's kind of a burden to put on oneself to be the peace that you wish to see, because yeah, in the same way as empathy, you have to be empathetic to inspire empathy around you. I think I got it.
Yes, so it's taught by example, and that's a bit of a frightening thought, because I might have come across one way as a relatively calm person, but inside I'm a Hieronymus Bosch painting, and it takes intention and practice and mistakes and regaining my balance to be able to move forward.
So yeah, I hear it's a pretty daunting task to embody the empathy, because from the outside, you're perceived as like a calm guy, and inside, I hear you say it's kind of like a painting of a lot of emotions, and that it takes a lot of like mistakes and learning from those, and kind of reevaluating a bunch of things to get to that place. And so it's not an easy task, and then that is your time.
Thank you. I feel heard.
Great. I guess let me talk to Edwin, because I talked to Eric last time.
Speaking.
I kind of wanted to relate to your comment about the exercise thing, because I also work as a hotline operator for like a sexual assault hotline counselor. And it was pretty interesting during my training to hear how much like reflective listening was a huge part of it. And let me stop there.
Yeah, so you're talking about what you do volunteering on a hotline, sexual assault hotline. You just, in your training, you just found that empathic listening was sort of a lot of training around that for what you're doing.
Yeah, and most of like the effective things to the best thing to do is basically have an empathy buddy call with someone, in the essence. And then if they like want more resources to give it, help them out. But it's more like just reflecting back what they're saying, and then validating what they're saying as well, and like targeting the guilt and shame that like every survivor of sexual assault feels. But at the essence, it is empathy circle. So
yeah, at the core of that is just listening, empathically listening to the person and validating them, and then they maybe feel shame and guilt, and just hearing them and being supportive in that way through empathic listening. It's like an empathy buddy.
Yeah. So I thought that comment about the exercising the muscle is interesting, and it brought more value to me for this exercise, because I realized how like integral this is to the work I want to do, and just how powerful it is to make someone feel heard.
Yeah, so this is the type of work that you'd like to do with like in the counseling, and you're seeing that this fits directly in that what you're wanting to do. So you just, I guess I'm hearing some appreciation for this practice.
Yeah, definitely. It's like I was accidentally working out muscle all year. So then when I was training for this hotline, it was like, oh, simple. So it was cool. So yeah, I am expressing appreciation for it.
Yeah, you are expressing appreciation, because you've been doing this learning, and that's, yeah, but what you've been doing is just learning to listen, empathically listen better.
Yeah. So yeah, I would like to keep doing the next training. I'm just gonna be gone, but I'm gonna be open for more opportunities to keep being a trainee as the year goes on. I gotta find out the best times though.
Yeah, so you'd like to keep, working on being a trainee, and just have to see what works in terms of scheduling.
Yeah. And then I probably should bring my mom into this. She would like it, but maybe in a different cohort. She can do it on her own time. But like she was saying the other week, she literally said, she's like, maybe I should try this empathy circle stuff. And I was like, yeah, I mean, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, so your mother's saying that she'd be interested in this, and maybe she should try it. And it sounds like you're feeling a little anxious about that too, but then maybe open for it too. So kind of weighing back and forth what to do. Sort of toying with the idea of and having her take part with you.
Yeah, and I think one of the cool parts about this whole system is the buddy calls, and that like I could talk to someone in Germany one day and someone in New York the other day, and it's just kind of interesting to I don't know, technology is great in that sense, I guess.
Yeah, another appreciation for the technology and being able to connect with people all around the world, you know, in the empathy buddy calls. And so yeah, so appreciating that connection as well as the technology that allows for that.
Mm-hmm. And then speaking more broadly about empathy, this is my last comment. I've noticed like a lot of the people I've met in psychology, in focusing on therapy and counseling, they all have that shared main component of empathy. And I've just have vibed with like so many people in this profession in the way that I haven't before in like the business realm, for example. It's interesting to see how a culture of empathy is very tangible.
So with in the counseling arena, the people are very empathic, and so you're really sort of resonating, vibing with that. And it's different sort of a community mindset than the business community.
Yes. 5 seconds, so that's my time. Thank you. I feel fully heard.
Okay, speak to Eric then. Yeah, there's so many different things coming up, but I guess I'd go back to just sort of a feeling. I sort of mentioned it in the check-ins that so that the feeling of an empathic space, you know, it's like, what does it sort of feel like? What does that space feel like? And what would like a culture of empathy feel like? So I'm kind of sitting with that and trying to sort of name it.
There's a lot of things coming up, but one thing that's continuing to bubble up is this kind of toying with this idea of like the feeling of an empathic space. What does it feel like, and how do you even put a name when it feels like something's kind of emerging out and you're trying to articulate it?
Yeah, it has for me, it has sort of a coolness to it. It's like a clarity, a clearness, and sort of a feeling of coolness. And sometimes I think maybe it feels too cold. It feel a little bit warmer somehow. Maybe think, maybe it should feel a little bit warmer.
So for you, an empathic space is like there's a coolness and there's like a clarity and a calmness, and a question of, does it possibly feel too cool? Like, should it feel warmer in some kind of way?
Yeah, and I think there's another feeling I would like. I guess these are feelings I would like, is maybe more of a feeling of creativity, of inspiration, like I did a lot of listening, you know, Ralph, I listened with Ralph, he had some concerns. There was other people, you know, with other issues that I listened to. And I enjoy the listening. I like the presence. It has a little feeling of coolness to me. It's so interesting how just listening is just so supportive for everyone, and how it creates a sense of connection. So it's sort of almost like magical in that sense. But there's something else that I'm looking for. And I think it may be more of a like, how do you have a feeling of creativity of something in that? So yeah, I'm not quite sure what I'm looking for, so I'm sort of struggling here.
Yeah, so you're recognizing these are just like feelings that you're looking for, that you would like to feel. And yeah, there's some magical capacity of being in the empathic space where it kind of registers, everyone feels good in it, it seems, a magical nature to it. But there's something else, you can't quite articulate it, it's emerging kind of from the fog. It seems like it's something about creativity, like some sort of energy, not just the coolness of like feeling connected or whatever, but some like inspiration or creativity that also is in the space.
Yeah, it's it's sort of like, where do I go next? Like, you know, with the development of the empathy circle, it may be part of it is, there's some, well, in conflict mediation, there's a sense of, you know, you hear people out, you hear each other, you get mutual understanding, And then there's a stage of what do we do next, right? It's like, and then you have a negotiation about creating some next steps to it. And it's all, maybe there's a structure that you're talking about. You know, there's a feeling of structure. There is that, and I'm all for structure too. I'm like, no structure. It's like, give me structure. So I have an appreciation for that structure. It's like, wow, this really works. But it's like, there's next steps, or I don't know, I'm kind of just rambling on here, but I'm looking for something. There's something I'm looking for.
I heard you're looking for something. There's something you're looking for. There's something about the conflict resolution model where it's like, yes, you talk through, you build that empathic space of understanding each other, but then part of the structure is that you discuss what are my next steps? Like, where do we go from here? And again, I'm hearing this strong theme of, you're like, I'm not sure what it is, but like something you're trying to put your finger on.
Yeah. And maybe it's that the overall structure of the society is so anti-empathic or low empathic, right? It's that all this stuff is happening with it's kind of like you can even have a little bit of warmth in the North Pole, right? But you're in the whole goddamn North Pole, which is, you're in an ice sickle, right? But you maybe in your little igloo, you can be kind of warm, but you still sense the overall coldness of the whole society, Maybe that, yeah, metaphorically.
So let's see if I've got you. So there's a sense, you think of like culture-wide, there's like a lack of an empathic sense. So it's almost like being in the North Pole, where it's like outside, you're in the middle of this giant kind of like cold space, but you can have like a bit of warmth, like in your little igloo. You can create that sense, but while still the fact that you're in a much larger cold space.
Yeah, so I'm just navigating. I'm kind of at the edge of my thoughts here, just kind of feeling into it. And there's something about the structure I appreciate. I have some real appreciation for your mentioning structure, finding structures that work, because I think those structures are important. And the empathy circle is, quite structured, that, has a real structure to it. And I think those structures are, maybe even structure can feel a little cold too. Maybe that's something. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, you're like at the edge of your kind of thoughts, kind of feeling around, but you have an appreciation for me mentioning structure. There's something about, like you recognize the empathy circle is very structured, but possibly there's a coldness even in structure, like you see the benefit, you're a big believer in structure, but also maybe there's a coldness that you associate with structure.
Maybe how to warm structure up, how to give, create a warm structure. Yeah, that was I'll end with that.
Yeah, so maybe there's, the question you're ending with is maybe like, how do we create warm structure, like warm structure up.
Yeah, I feel fully heard. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. Ralph, would you be willing to be my listener? I'm feeling very energized right now. Yeah, the question of like, where do we go from here? is, I think it's the question that is being asked way more than people are often aware of.
You're feeling energized, and you reflected, where do we go from now as a pressing question that few people are grappling with?
Well, I think it's actually like, it's always present for people. And it's just a question of like, how conscious are people of the fact that they are like, have that question almost at every moment.
This is the question that is over everybody's heads, but how aware are they of it?
Yeah. I'm also, man, it really stuck with me, Ed, when you had mentioned the 1%, like chop off the 1%, we have another 1%. And I had tears in my eyes as I was thinking, because I am so conscious of that usually from the opposite direction, where it's like, well, cut off the just shittiest person and then we'll have a better society. But then there's a new shittiest person that you have to cut off. Then there's a new, and it's like that process is always leading us towards basically, relying on my kind of Christian upbringing, it's hell. It's like complete separation from everyone. Like we're moving towards that in every moment, thinking that we're trying to make our lives better by like cutting off the thing that we hate or dislike or makes us uncomfortable.
Cutting off shitty people is unending, and you wind up in a kind of hell, which goes against the grain of your Christian upbringing, which emphasizes inclusion, which is the opposite of hell.
Well, no, it's just like I think of hell because of my Christian upbringing. Like that's like kind of that's where I bring the metaphor in. So yeah, like so figuring out my articulating my purpose, my life's purpose or whatever, has just been a major thing for me for the past few years. And even these conversations recently, like on these empathy calls and the buddy calls and stuff, has been really just helping me like articulate that it's like, yeah, systems that help us move more towards that, like truly like a culture of empathy, or what I would say is even just like a culture of love, like actual love. Like that is what I care about, probably more than anything.
You have been preoccupied for the past number of years with where you're going to go with your life, and it comes up in the buddy calls, it comes up in the circles, and how can there be, I think you said, a structure that actually creates loving community.
Yeah, at least improves the odds of it. And I'm in a weird like a new chapter. I'm like transitioning into some sort of new chapter, because it's like I've spent a lot of time trying to basically be in what I think amounts to a bit of a convincing energy with like people who are very far away from agreeing with me on the perspective of what I call like no bad parts, so that there are no evil people. I've been in that energy of like, can I like build events and build, opportunities to convince people of that. And I'm realizing I'm running out of capacity to do that. And I want to just kind of spend more time with people who already believe that type of thing. But the paradox is I don't want it to just be like an ancestral space of like, we're just saying like, yeah, loving is so good. And it's like, I want to be out there doing things and like impacting, like shifting society. But I'm in some sort of transition period where it's like, oh, I don't know where to put my energy right now.
You're in a transition stage in your life, and you've been knocking your head against trying to get people to think and believe like you do, that there are no bad parts, no bad people, but maybe you've hit something of a wall, and now you're thinking perhaps I should turn to those people who are my natural allies and who I feel comfortable with and who will reinforce my myself and my vision.
Yeah. And part of my my state of perplexity right now is that it's like I really like doing practical things in local community, but there are very few people who share this like belief, period. I want to say even as much as I do, but it's almost like period. It's like a lot of my collaborators and people who have they're very like kindness oriented or whatever, but there's a fundamental like difference in kind of our core belief system, at least currently, and that it's contributing to like a sense of loneliness and like discomfort at the very least, and maybe a little bit of pain for me.
So even some of your collaborators who are kind are not delivering the relationships and the progress that you wish, and it's frustrating and making you feel lonely.
Yeah, thanks, Ralph. I feel heard.
Thank you. Trying to keep track. Edwin, would you listen to me?
Yep, listening.
So once again, just a few comments from each of you has engendered the headings for many themes. And I'm thinking of this notion of structure versus feeling content.
So you've all the things we've been saying has generated a lot of thought, and you're kind of focusing on the feeling and structure. So the relationship of feeling and structure.
I live in a world that's dominated by people who are in love with a structure. But if I were left to my own devices to create an agenda, it would look like a poem.
So your community, people you're around, they really like structure, but you would approach things differently, more poetically.
Well, being in a minority, I speak both languages, just as if I'm Black in a white culture. And I know how to do the structure, but it's not, and I don't ignore it. But I see there's no painting that has color and does not have form. And that to me is the dynamism of trying to separate structure at the, or emphasize structure or emphasize what fills structure.
So you can speak structure and you can speak poetry as well, but there is no piece of art, no poetry that doesn't have some kind of a form or some kind of a structure too. So there's some kind of an interplay or between the two.
I'm very much on board with your desire and what Eric expressed as well, and perhaps you are in accord with too, Dominic, to have the most effective meetings, programs, procedures. And I think that the evolution, these are my words, the evolution doesn't have to do with quantifying and putting numbers on things exclusively. And I think there's a meta view that's called for to see how our common goal can be achieved.
So you're also seeing it sounds like, I think I'm hearing like you have the desire for an impact, and that there's sort of a meta, you can have sort of a meta view for achieving that impact. I don't know if I quite got that, but.
Yes, and I'm calling for all of us who are interested in extending this great work to bear that in mind. I went to school for clinical psychology, as I shared with Dominic. And when it came to turns for somebody to say, why are you in this program, PhD program? And he said, I want to make good money. And in the field, there are not necessarily empathic people. There may be manipulative people, yet they say, I'm a Rogerian.
So you've been in the clinical psychology field, and there's people in it who are just going for making the money. They say, oh, I'm a Rogerian, and they're really just, their motivation is to make money.
So in any endeavor, the quality of the culture that's upholding it is extremely important. In the 70s, I had a tough go in graduate school because I was part of what was called the humanistic psychology movement, as if you have to say humanistic for psychology. So to look beyond the practice, people can become facile with the practice and can understand the structure inside and out. How do they come to the table? And are they willing to abandon structure for empathy, as I heard Lou say once?
Mm-hmm. So you're looking at how people, when they come to the table, how they can let go of structure for empathy, for the quality of empathy, or sort of the beingness or the feeling or quality of empathy, and that you had to being even saying when you were in grad school to you're a humanist, and that was like even seen, sounds like it was just a little ironic that you had to even stand up for that. Or
I feel heard. Thank you.
Okay. Speak to Dominic then next.
Good.
Yeah. My sense, something about the, a lot of different, well, I think we can go for hours on this. It would be great to have like a 3 or 4 hour circle with you all on this. Maybe I'll pause there.
Yeah, I hear you have a lot of thoughts in that. We could go 3 or 4 hours with this group and just keep going.
And it's that quality, that concept of structure and empathy, because I see that within the empathy circles creates that structure for holding empathy. Like when I've done sort of conflict mediations, we'll do this structure, empathic listening, for a couple hours. And there comes a point where the underlying sort of mindset kind of just drops away and everybody starts hearing each other. It's like that mindset of, I will fully hear you until you feel heard. I'll try to give everyone sort of equal time and space. Some of those qualities that the structure, we're kind of just hearing each other, having time turns. And after 2, maybe even 3 hours, more like 3 hours, it kind of falls away and something clicks. And it's like everybody clicks into this sort of mindset. You can just sort of feel it. And we're really deeply holding this mindset. But the empathy circle is kind of like training wheels, right? It's like we got the training wheels until suddenly the training wheels fall to the side, and we're in that sort of a deeper empathic space.
Okay, so I hear you reflecting on that discussion of structure and empathy and commenting on how the empathy circle structure kind of facilitates empathetic listening, and more specifically in conflict mediation, that the structure serves as kind of training wheels that after like 3 or 4 hours, it breaks away and this deeper empathetic understanding is facilitated, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And somebody just came up to me and was like, what the fuck happened with the whole psychology and Rogerian therapy stuff? It's like they hardly will take part in, there's all these, therapists, there's not a lot of, I would think that the therapist would just be saying, this is great, let's do mutual empathy. And it's like, there's not that many therapists and people who have studied psychology that come into this as I thought there would. I thought that, so I'm like, what's going on?
So I'm hearing you're surprised of like, why aren't these like Rogerian like therapists, like why aren't there more people here doing this? And why at first it sounds like you'd expect more therapists to be into this, but it's, where are they, right?
Yeah,
like, why aren't there more?
And I think I'm kind of going all over the place, but with therapy, it's like you start with the client-therapist relationship. I am the therapist, you are the client, and I think that does some damage to the empathy in a sense. It's important for like emergency empathy, people need this support, but I think that the empathy circle is like therapists. It seems to me to be much more effective as therapists. We're kind of doing empathy circles, with, mutual empathic listening with their clients. So I guess I have some frustrations about the whole therapeutic world, and there's something that's blocking constructive forward motion, it seems to me.
So I'm hearing that you're reflecting on the dynamic between therapist and client is what I hear is more one-sided. It's not an exchange. It's empathy given to the client, and that dynamic is frustrating and potentially damaging. And maybe that's the element of why I don't want to add my own. Just I hear the frustration in the maybe the therapeutic mindset is a little more damaging than healing at some point.
Yeah, and the curiosity, like I don't understand what's going on there. So it's just interesting that Ralph comes, has been in that world, and I'm kind of curious, like that, what is it that that there's not, because for me, it's like therapy should be, oh, I'm going to listen to you in emergency. You know, you're having a lot of stress, problems. I will listen to you, but then you got to learn to listen to me. So it's mutual, right? It's that going from an individualistic view to a mutual view. And then, like, how about you learn how to have empathy, empathic listening, or an empathic way of being with your family and the larger community? So I think there's a bunch of steps that are missing from this whole therapeutic sort of model.
Okay, so I hear, because that's your last,
Okay.
I hear that what I missed earlier was the curiosity that's there. It's like, why aren't therapists coming here? And then hearing Ralph's experience sparked that curiosity even more because he was from that world. And that the thing missing is kind of the mutual exchange between client and therapist that will further go on to affect the client's like family and their relationships by teaching them that skill. And that in times of emergency, it makes sense to like, I'll help you in a crisis, but in the calm times, why aren't there more mutual expressions?
Exactly. Hit the nail on the head. Thanks, Dominic.
Great. Yeah, no problem. Eric, you listen? Cool. Cool points. I have a few comments to respond to. Well, first, Eric, the idea of no bad parts. I was thinking of someone I talked to in one of the graduate schools I'm trying to go to. Her name's Yanni Chu Richardson. Her dissertation is on restorative justice and kind of going into, I'll stop there. I'll explain more.
So you said lots of things that you want to talk about, but one thing stimulated by me mentioning the concept of no bad parts. You're talking about a person who you have connection with who's wrote her dissertation on restorative justice.
Yeah, so she's working at San Quentin prison in the Bay Area where I'm at, or in Oakland, actually, maybe not in the prison, but she goes and she facilitates these, in a way, circles, but like between an offender and victim. So if there's a violent offense occurring in Oakland, she will kind of hold like a town hall in a way to describe what the victim and say what happened to them, how it made them feel. And the perpetrator can talk about how it made them feel and like what they thought about, and kind of not locking them away, like in the no bad parts idea. There's kind of a community intervention that brings these two people together in a safe way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this friend hosts these, this connection hosts these circles in Oakland, restorative justice circles, where the what we typically call victim and perpetrator, like it's almost like a town hall type of thing where they can work through, instead of like locking the bad perpetrator quote unquote away, there's like a space for them to actually like talk through what happened.
Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting and thought it'd be cool food for thought. Just given what you were saying, I just wanted to throw that out there. Yeah, and so yeah, that was that point.
Yeah, so you just thought it would be interesting. It would be kind of food for thought. You thought it might be interesting to hear that, like given what I had said earlier.
Yeah, and then to Edwin's point earlier, I reflect on my own therapy. I've been seeing a therapist for a little over a year, completely life changing, but that dynamic is interesting. You know, I don't really know anything about this dude at all. It's just, it's funny when I tell my friends, they laugh because I'm just like, I don't know anything about a therapist.
Mm-hmm. So reflecting on Edwin's point and thinking about your own journey with therapy, you've been with your therapist for a year now. It's been life-changing, really positive, but at the same time, you don't know anything about this therapist. And it's like kind of, yeah, even funny to kind of reflect on the fact that, yeah, you know, you have this therapeutic relationship and you don't know anything about him.
Yeah. And I've noticed like when there are sessions when I know I'm not listening, like when I can't even listen to what he's saying and he's like trying to help me, I can see the frustration when it's not connecting. There's some barrier. But like the most effective sessions have been when I'm like, yeah, okay. And I reflect back what he's saying. It's like, exactly. And then like we keep going, but without the client being, because I'm also trying to be a therapist, so it's a unique, more productive relationship that we have. I see Edwin's point of if there's not that mutual listening on both ends, it could really fall apart.
Yeah. So you're recognizing or toying with this idea of it actually could be a more effective, like powerful client therapeutic relationship, as evidenced by the times where there's been kind of a sense of disconnect, maybe an energetic disconnect between you and your therapist. And then you've actually been able to step in using your training, reflect back, have him feel heard, and then it kind of unlocks that and you're able to flow forward.
Yeah. and I think the idea that Edwin brought up is actually really, really, really insightful. Of like, we should be teaching the clients these skills to impact their communities, and it makes a lot of sense to keep going with it. I'd not really thought about it that way. But the way I've thought about therapy, and I just saw a quote online, is it's like friendship prostitution. I'm buying friendship from this dude, you know? Or like, even he's like maybe 60, 70. It could be surrogate fatherhood prostitution, right? And like, kind of pick it like it. That's how I would see how my business would be if I become a therapist. It's just it's a cool way to think about it in a different sense. That, you know, how do we keep moving it forward?
Yeah. Yeah, so you really like the idea that Edwin presented of this idea of teaching the clients the skills to take it and progress it out in their own community, and also reflecting on this idea of like, there's a way that you can look at the client therapy relationship where it's almost like a prostitution, like a surrogate friend, or even like a surrogate parental figure. There's like a reparenting that you're paying money to have this kind of like, yeah, surrogate figure, and you're imagining that could possibly be the way that you could see your own, like the path that you're working towards. It could be, it's like fair to possibly frame it that way.
Yeah, perfect. And that's my time. Thank you. Feel fully heard.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. So do we have only time for just one more share, or how does
Looks like about one more. Yeah.
I don't think I've spoken to you, Dominic, as a listener. So do you mind if I just like pop back?
Absolutely. Yeah, go for it.
One thing that's alive for me, it's funny that I hear it a little bit less, but I still hear it, where older people speaking to me and are saying, oh, I wish I had your XYZ when I was your age. And I feel that same way towards you to some degree, as you talk about like you being 23, already kind of like locking in, like having all these experiences of skills, but being locked in on work that I judge to be very meaningful and probably I imagine pretty aligned with your sense of purpose. Like to have that at 23 years old, I'm 31 now. I'm like, dang, like fucking good for you, dude.
Thank you. Yeah, I hear what's alive is kind of reflecting on like when older people tell you kind of like, oh, I wish I had XYZ. I hear I hear you expressing appreciation for certain things I'm showing, and that we'll see. Yeah, and that I hear appreciation and validation. Thanks.
Yeah. There's a sense of celebration and for you. And there's probably something deeper that I have to reflect in, like putting myself more in, I'll probably be chewing on a little bit, like put myself more into context of my own life by being, yes, I'm not sure what will happen, but I think there will be some chance for me to reflect on my own self.
So yeah, I hear that it's like you're sharing some celebration, emotion or feelings, and that it might give you some stuff to chew over in your own life, and kind of some things to think about, maybe in the circle, maybe later. Stuff.
Yeah. Dude, another thing that's coming up, it's pretty interesting, is my ideal life and community, and I have like kind of a semi-intentional roommate situation, is that there's no structure. Like there's like no need for it. Like structure, it's like we get to a place, kind of I think what Edwin was describing, that you like the need for that falls away because you've hit like a flow.
Yeah. So I hear another thing that's alive for you is the ideal life and scenario for you is one without a structure at all. And I guess I even relate to the roommate as well, like where you get into such a flow that structure is not needed and things just work.
Yeah, like truly like a loving space or whatever, where it's like, it's a loving but also skilled space, I guess, where it's like I'm so in tune with my own body, in tune with my own needs, probably because I've had a fair amount of systems that helped me learn that, whether they're intentional or unintentional, just kind of like naturally taught them by family of origin or not. But I'm so in tune with myself, and I have such a sense of like abundance or whatever the factors are that enable a person to be in this space. But it's like I'm in tune with myself and my needs, and I also am skilled and caring about yourself and your needs.
Okay, so I hear it's packaged in like a state of love and skill, in that you would know your needs, you'd have abundance of the things you would need that falls from that, and that you're in tune with the other and what they need and love, and that this attunement with oneself maybe arises naturally or through systems that are already in place.
Right. Yeah, and it's great if they arise naturally, and I look around and I see what, so nonviolent communication, I think it's mentioned earlier, it's another model that's very, very important for me. And the founder, he talks about cycles of violence, basically, where it's like, lack of skill leading to just like cycles and cycles and cycles of violence. And violence in my mind being, it could be like, physical violence, but it's also just like, interpersonal or emotional, spiritual violence.
Okay, so at first I hear you saying like, oh, it's nice if it arises naturally, and then you segue to nonviolent communication and the cycles of violence that the founder talks about, and how the lack of skills perpetuates these cycles, and violence is kind of defined more, not just physically, but like emotionally, mentally, psychologically, and
I really like what comes to mind is Edwin playing with this idea of like feelings. Like I almost imagine him as kind of like pulling knobs, or like it's like what's it called, like really like fine tuning or dialing in like the feeling or emotional space. Just even being in that space is like exciting for me to think about.
Okay, so I hear you commenting on Edwin's discussion of feelings, like what comes up from empathy, and you can even picture him like dialing knobs and pulling things out of space, and it's interesting to think about just like that process itself. I think.
Like developing spaces, and then ultimately developing culture or societies or whatever, where it's like what way do we all want to feel is basically like, do we want to feel good right now? Do we want to feel relaxed? Do we want to feel scared? Like we can put on a horror movie. Like, do we want to feel challenged? We can go make our life really difficult. Do we want to feel peaceful? We'll go, it's like just having the skill and the capacity and the resources to just like shape the way that we want to feel. It's another thing, my view on life is that it's like we're trying to do that already, and it's just a matter of how skillful or how conscious we are of the process that we're in already.
Okay, so I hear it's like establishing systems, like places to kind of have that capacity to kind of choose how we feel, and give people the option of like, oh, do I want to feel scared, watch a movie? Do I want to feel challenged, do this and that? And have the skill and resources to let people kind of enact that. And we already maybe even do unconsciously, but more maybe in a conscious way.
Yeah, thank you. I feel heard.
Yeah, great. We got 1 minute. Quick sentence. How was that, Edwin?
I loved it. I love talking to you guys here. Really wish we could talk longer. It's I could go for a couple hours.
Yeah, same. Ralph, 1 sentence. How you feeling? Are you muted? Are you muted? Yeah.
I'd like to make a date to seriously explore these things. And as I keep threatening, Edwin, I've been thinking of some abstract things along the very lines that you brought up. And I also feel poignancy that you've created this thing, but needs more, so it's not where you went wrong, but it's where you went right and how we can get better. That's how I look at it. Thank you. Thank you all.
Yeah, thanks, Ralph. Eric, 1 sentence, quick.
Feeling juiced and grateful for y'all. And thank you, Dominic, for holding space.
Yeah, hell yeah. That was awesome. That I felt very the energy. I felt very light. It was fun. I'll be right back and use this refresher real quick.
Okay, got about 12 seconds. Everyone will be popping back.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Bill, you were doing this, right?
Right. Okay. All right. I see that people are still taking a little bit of a bio break. That's fine. We're coming back now. And so we have two questions that we'd like to kind of harvest information on. The first one is, what did you like about the training and what were the benefits? So I'll start to go around for people that I can see, and then we'll get to the second question. All right. So I see Dominic, you're in my sights there. So please share.
Yeah. Thanks, Bill. I just love meeting all these new people and getting perspective on all these different walks of life, from different age ranges, geographic locations, and having these deep connections that are hard for me to have during quarantine over Zoom. It's very meaningful. Thank you.
Okay, great. Ralph.
Another magical time. And Carl Rogers used to say that the more personal people were, the deeper they got into themselves, the more they tapped into a universality. And that's what I felt in the group, that I think we all agreed could have gone on for a couple of more hours.
Great. Thanks, Ralph. Edwin.
Yeah, the training, I think, is a really good first step, for learning these skills. And then, and I'm just thinking about something I like to do, this is sort of going into the next steps, is to hold maybe some day-long empathy cafes, so kind of empathy cafe marathons. We're really really a lot of energy in our group, and would have liked to have kept going. And maybe I'll set that up sometime. Say, hey, come and let's do a sort of an 8-hour marathon. What would that be like?
Yeah, we'll have to.
Great.
Okay.
With bio breaks.
Yeah, with bio breaks. Eric.
I'm laughing about the bio breaks because I think that's been my request every time. Something I liked about this training is, I mentioned at the circle earlier, was the lightweight nature of the structure. Like, it feels very like scalable and very like easily implementable. And then also just the opportunity to spend time with people who I feel like resonate with a very like deeply held part of myself, which is like the way that I view other people, and how they're, as I said in the circle, like there's no bad parts, there's no bad people. So like being in spaces with people who resonate with that is extremely nourishing for me. So thank you all.
Great. And I'll just quickly restate the question. If some people are in bio breaks. So what did you like about the training and what were the benefits? Joelle.
I just feel like I learn so much every time, and I learn so much from all of you. And and I'm really resonating with what Eric and Dominic said, that it affords me the ability to connect with people who have deeper empathy capacity, because there's so much sort of lack of empathy struggle in the world that we see. So I'm grateful for connecting with all of your empathetic brains.
Great to have you here, Joelle. Larry.
Yeah, it is amazing to connect in this empathic, safe space. I'm so grateful to all the trainers, and to Edwin, and to Carl Rogers, and to all of the great mystics throughout human history who have known there's another way. There's another way for us to live, instead of the competitive, dominating, patriarchal, warmongering way, which has been the history of the world and continues to be. So I'm grateful to each one of us for every step we take to build that strong heart within each one of us. Thank you all.
Thank you, Larry. Kathy?
Yes. So empathy is a practice. And so in practicing, I get better. And it's wonderful to have the gift of empathy, some people giving that to me. And the word that comes up for me is generosity. It's a very generous practice. And yeah, I like that I will continue to get better and better. And that it not only, it grows the heart. And the heart and the mind are connected. The heart and the brain are connected. So I'm grateful for the ability to grow and contribute to others. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. Julia.
Thank you, Bill. Yeah, for me, what I like about the training, the aspect that I like the most are that it's really practical. So we have a lot of time to facilitate in our small circles. And I always appreciate when the trainers share their experiences or maybe even anecdotes with what happened in some circles or in their when dealing with conflicts and so on. It's really interesting every time. What I learn, I'm as someone already mentioned, that I'm in the process, so I'm learning to learn how to speak and how to listen, to be there, to be more present and focused when I listen.
Okay. Thank you, Julia. Lou.
I'm just what did I get out of the training? So I think meeting all of you and being part of your learning and learning from you is, I think, the gift that I got out of the training. And I just would also offer that, however you're feeling right now, because this is kind of the end of this, this training, however you're feeling right now about your ability to facilitate, just keep at it. And with experience, your confidence will grow and your understanding will grow and your ability to do it will grow. So, yeah.
Thanks.
Trust that.
Thanks. Anne?
Yeah, I think I've maybe said before, I'm just grateful for being able to have this contact with all of you. There's so much wisdom and experience and skills already present within people who've been doing this before, but every one of you, or the new people too, you bring yourselves and share bits of yourselves and your thoughts and ideas. And there's so much to learn and benefit from every single time. So, and it enriches my life and it enriches my practice.
Great, thanks, Anne. Dean?
I'm going to sound like a scratch record here because I've got to repeat exactly what Anne said there.
Yeah.
The joy of spending time with all these wonderful souls, hearing new voices, hearing new ways of saying the same wonderful thing about listening to hear rather than listening to compete. And from the training, I learned how to listen to hear. And from the training, I've learned how to think about this and how it can be practiced in many different ways and on many different levels. And it's been a pleasure and it's an ongoing practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Michelle.
Yeah, the thing about this different for me about normal conversations and empathy circle, well, like we're either, in these deeper conversations, is that every single time I leave changed. Like, the words of like Sally and Julia and of Dean I have changed from that interaction, and it feels so profound that it's like there's nothing else that I like. There's like rock concerts are pretty cool things to go to. And, I don't know, there's so many things we want to do, but the aliveness that you feel in these circles there's something really deep and profound that's beyond like time stands still and bends and everything. And it's just, I just feel so nourished in my soul, in my bones, in my being. I love it. Yeah. Just really grateful to everybody who's in my circle this evening.
Thank you, Michelle. Ben?
Yeah, there's part of it sort of this sense of expansion or sense of boundarylessness or sense of timelessness or oneness. So I want to say there are layers of empathy. So one thing I like is kind of being in empathy, of empathy, kind of with empathy with myself, like founded on empathy, and moving towards empathy, while the rest of you are doing the same thing. But I'm not sure that captures it. But I do see the possibility of kind of being together with you. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love this practice, because it affords that. Thanks.
Thank you, Ben. Prasanna.
I feel like the beauty of this particular training was that it didn't feel like a training. That's the beauty of it. That I've never felt like, okay, we are coming, feel like a common own space where people are coming together and co-learning from each other, co-creating space. So that was the beauty of this particular design. I really want to learn that design. It's amazing how it was done. So that was the highlight for me for the training. And I'm very grateful that this opportunity came my way in my lifetime, that at this time of my life that I was able to learn about this amazing value, this practice. And I know how much beauty, how much self-awareness it brought to me. And there's so much more in life left. And I can use this powerful practice to change my life actually and the people around it. So I'm so hopeful. I can just see the future and how it's going to unfold now with this practice, this empowerment which I have now today with me. I feel so still. Thank you.
Thank you, Prasanna. Graham.
Thank you, Bill. Prasanna mentioned a word today, and that's mutual space, which may have been taken from Edwin originally, but nonetheless, it stirred something in me. And this is my objective. And I use different words like creating a shared reality or experiencing an emotional shift, or like Ralph said, creating or discovering that common humanity, and all those kind of concepts is what I am actually trying to aim for. And I'm discovering also that there's such a lot to learn. But here's where I've been able to sort of begin to build that understanding of how to do that and what blocks I create in actually getting there. So I thank you all very much for what I've learned over the last 5 weeks and also a bit longer as well. So thank you. And the other thought I have is I want to thank Prasanna and Julia, and I'm making a guess here because English is not your mother tongue. And thank you for your extra effort in coming here and talking English and facing the difficulty of trying to convert from your mother language to ours. And I really appreciate what you've done. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Great, thanks. I think we all are grateful for that. Thanks, Graham. Cynthia.
Gosh, I want to echo what so many others have said. Number one, a benefit of this training for me was just this beautiful community of people. The generosity, the kindness, the willingness to listen and willingness to learn together has just been such a gift. And, beautiful trainers, beautiful structure to the training, and it's helped me learn something about the journey from holding really tightly to ease. So something about learning something new and really stretching myself and going, like, there's all these things to look at, and am I minding all the things at the same time while I'm trying to facilitate? That's a really, it's a lot. Lou has likened it to learning how to drive when you don't know how to drive. And there's all these things. It seems really intimidating. You just do it over time, and now it's second nature. Well, I'm really learning as someone in middle age, learning something new and going from that holding really tightly to just allowing, which really gives a lot of space and says, oh, I have never cared when anyone has said, ooh, I'm scared I'm not doing it right. I'm just present for that. That has affected me in no negative ways. So the kind of allowing, the vulnerability, the letting be whatever things really are is something I'm taking home with me so deeply. And I'm thinking a lot about what components made that, Edwin, all the trainers, everyone who's committed to this, the iterative experiential learning, and the deep, deep component to me, the kindness, the generosity, and the empathy that actually makes whatever happens okay. So all those pieces have come together in a magical way for me. And I want to thank every one of you. It's been just an incredible pleasure and something I look forward to every week.
Great, Cynthia, thanks. And Sally.
Okay, food in my mouth. Well, in my mind, it's an evolution for myself to learn, to improve, to be a good listener and not interrupt. And anyway, just at a basic level, at a group level, it was phenomenal meeting and learning and stretching my skills to the maximum extent that I was able to, and look forward to the next go around when my house is finished painting.
Good. Well, glad you could be here, Sally. Well, this training, again, what comes to me is our individual struggles, how each of you have taken empathy. And yes, we're in a group, and that's great. And but also how it's also solitary in the sense that you leave this, and then a lot of times, you're not met with the same kind of acceptance that you are in this group. And that takes a lot of courage. And I just want to celebrate each person's courage to really embrace empathy. What does it mean to you? And then take your own individual take on it and bring that into the world. And so I'm feeling very grateful for that. Now I'm going to pass to me. So there's a second question here. And this is about the culture of empathy. We don't, want to build up a dogma, but nevertheless, the circle practice has certain kind of, understood, implied attitudes that make the circle right. And then again, it's, we take these out into the world. So the three core values that we've talked about, well, four actually, is empathy. And so that's the center, but also mutuality, the ability so that to make sure that everybody is participating and feels taken care of. Openness, so that we're dealing with, each other in a way that we can feel, if we feel safe enough, we can show our vulnerability, and we can, work together cooperatively. And care, care for each other, which somewhat overlap. This is not a comprehensive list. There will be no salesman coming to your door to say, are you doing this today? But this is something, this is like, okay, we've done the circle. We've sort of built a mini culture of empathy. We've identified these core values. And so the question then becomes, how do you see the empathy circle practice fitting into this larger idea of a culture of empathy in the larger world? And what will you, how has the training affected you? And then how has that your behavior changed towards the open world? And then also, how might you, take empathy circles to the next step or introduce the practice? And there's a lot there. Try to just focus on, we'll put the, I'll put the core values in the chat so you can kind of reflect on that. There are more values. Again, it's not particular, the only 3 values. Edwin has a lot more on this thing. So let's see. And I'll just start, let's see, from the bottom, I guess. Sally, is that okay? Do you feel ready, or are you, would you like us to come back to you? Okay.
As far as forming a group, well, I'm just gonna compact it to the development of the Empathy Circle game that will be incorporated with young people, because I can't do enough. I just have to make it one thing to get one thing done.
Yeah, and for the rest of you, I've been working with Sally on it. It's great. It's great fun. I'm having a great time, Sally. So thanks. Cynthia.
So I'm working with 2 brand new graduate TAs this semester. I just met them on Zoom. One is coming in from Ghana to start a new PhD program, and one is coming from tiny town, West Tennessee. And I think they're both going to be terrific. And I want to practice the process with them. And then I'd like to bring it to my students. And I'm teaching race in the US and contemporary social problems this fall at my university. And so I'm wanting to really explore how to use the Empathy Circle practice within my classes and really get more experience with it. And then I have been speaking with Edwin. We've been speaking with each other about the idea of the critical race theory dialogue, taking folks who have really differing beliefs about this issue in the US. There's a big, for anyone not in the US or isn't aware of this at the moment, big thing with the term critical race theory, which most people in the mainstream don't know what that is. They're having a lot of feelings about that being taught in K through 12 schools. It's not. And so I, as an educator, have a lot of desire to both share with people what that is, and then think about how to build some empathy circles around that topic. And I'm excited to see where that might move forward, to have people hearing each other in new ways.
Great. Well, sounds great. Look forward to hearing about it. Graham.
Thank you, Bill. Over the last 18 months, I've actually been restructuring all of my social contacts. It's also been assisted by COVID. And essentially, I've changed the way in which I intend to relate to people. And so I've basically pushed all sorts of people out of my life. So I don't have a circle of contacts who I can create an empathy circle with. That's not exactly correct, but it's not where my priority should lie. My priority lies in learning to create safe empathic spaces and connections with those people who I do know. And that's where my priority is. When I've got that button down, should I ever button it down, but once I've got that button down, I will then move into an empathy circle. There should be a little natural progression, but so I'm not going to rush that. My focus is on developing the empathic process as part of my repertoire.
Great.
So thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Prasanna?
So the larger part of the work which I do is with young adults. And these young adults come from communities, marginalized communities, and for them, Hindi language is their mother tongue. English, they are not comfortable with. So I really, the content which we share with them, the training which we do with them is on how they can use non-violent tools to resolve conflicts. I think this whole practice fits so well with that whole concept which we are running with these young adults. I really want to integrate this practice within our own curriculum, but whole circles in Hindi language, because this community of young adults in India, which is very large, India is such a big country with so much of population, but most of them speak Hindi. So for them to be having accessibility to this practice, I envision trainers, facilitators who know Hindi, who are empowered with this particular practice, and creating spaces for these young adults where they can talk their heart out. So I have this whole vision in front of me. I really want to create such space, but language shouldn't be a barrier for them.
Right.
They won't be able to make part of these particular platforms. They won't be able to participate in them because of English. I want to create that space for them.
Sounds great. Many languages, one community. Ben.
Yeah, so what's next? I'm a mediator, and so playing with this with some of my mediator colleagues. And I think so that's ostensibly for listening, for kind of learning about listening and learning to listen. Yeah, but there's obviously layers to that. So there's that. And yeah, I also wanted to say, I wonder, yeah, I appreciate this kind of focus on values, and then this kind of present moment stuff, sort of like what's alive for you, as well as the topic. And then the kind of the context or the frame of what we're doing, and naming that as providing a structure. And so I guess I noticed some of those things kind of entering other areas of my life, because I think that's part of what makes possible what we're doing.
Thank you, Ben. Michelle.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, I'm just thinking about, I wasn't sure actually, because I'm trying to let my heart guide what happens next. So and I've did a few different volunteering projects I'm kind of thinking about, I think, yeah, that it just seems to be calling forth, but I'm also thinking that my main reason has been around this whole issue around suicide awareness. That was my whole I just feel like this whole empathy movement is critical to being able to heal that and turn it around and being that change within the world. So yeah, I feel like I kind of really just have to wait for what's emerging and what gets called. But I think the trauma sensitive work that happened in this cohort, that was a huge part of it. And I think yeah, I'm just going to lean into what wants to unfold and trust them.
Thanks, Michelle. Dean.
I think what I'm going to be doing is taking this practice into people's environment that wouldn't actually want to do this practice, such as onto the streets during the rebellion. I'm going to be holding crisis talks with people that don't want to talk, and it'll be interesting to hear how they react to being reflected. I'll try and do it without them being aware of it, because the whole idea is to open them up to a new principle, which is community rather than competitiveness. So it's taking this process into the real world's the hard part, and that's where we've got to go. And yeah, it'll be interesting. And then, of course, into the new political party I'm part of, getting them to actually listen to each other in a structured dialogue way will be a very interesting practice.
Thank you, Dean. Anne.
Yeah, I think some of that will unfold, but carrying on with helping train facilitators and empathy cafes, and ways to kind of incorporate it into other activities that happen within Extinction Rebellion. Yeah, and I too have been thinking about crisis talks, the co-liberation part of it. So possibly within co-liberation. Yeah, and carrying on with HS2 support.
Great, thanks, Anne. Lou.
Yeah, so I think my area, well, first off, I mean, I'm going to continue working on this training and developing trainers who can train others in the training. So that's one way to keep it going. But I am particularly also interested in using empathy circles in the areas of social change. So working with people who are working for social change. So helping them to understand empathy circle process, both for their own healing and their own understanding of themselves, and then also for their trying to create a culture of willingness to listen to others, people who are different than them. I think that that's a real strong interest of mine. And then the other is in families. Using empathy circle practice within families. I think that's a really powerful lever also. Another place where if that was happening more, it would make a giant difference. So I'm interested in those two things.
Great, thanks, Lou. Julia.
Yeah, I think that what I want to do is to bring what I've learned here into my personal life. So I want to take it to like a 24/7 practice. Like I want to be present when I listen, when I speak, and like reminding myself constantly about what I learned here. And I will do so trying to focus on the values, and especially on openness, as I feel like I'm lacking a bit on that. And yeah.
Thank you, Julia. Eric.
I am going to continue kind of wrestling with how to further integrate this practice, or like similar to what Dominic mentioned, restorative justice, like circles, that type of thing in my like hyper-local community, my neighborhood specifically, because it's just the perfect additive to every single like sector that people are working on. And the struggle for me is like people don't really understand it quite yet. So it's like enrolling. It's like if we're talking about neighborhood watch or whatever, it's like perfect place for an empathy circle. So continuing to work to how to like, enroll people into that process. And then longer term, I would love to basically establish something similar to what's happening here, like a training the trainers type of thing in my local city. And kind of building, expanding this out I'm currently in Austin, Texas, but really wherever I'm at, it would be super fun to be a part of, like setting up a structure like this and expanding it out.
Great, thanks, Eric. Joelle?
I feel like this empathy practice just radiates kind of everywhere in my life. Like when I show up in conversations with my young adult, I've got 2 young adult kids that are struggling somewhat with emerging into adulthood during this very strange time. But the empathy practice shows up in everything that I do. And I want to do some stuff with coworkers. And thanks to everyone for giving me some feedback about what might be blocking my getting that going. And I'm also really interested in trauma-sensitive, trauma-informed sort of perspective in facilitation. So that's it. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Joelle. Good luck. Larry.
Yeah. Sharing. You know, I think it's a natural part of our human experience. When we find something like an empathy circle, we just naturally want to share it. And so I'm sharing it on my website, miaminetwork.org. We're sharing it in a group of people who are suffering from PTSD, and they love it. And I love sharing this. And I think it's natural for us to share it with our Facebook friends and our LinkedIn friends and our family and our coworkers. I think it's natural that we share. And here's what I want to say. Years ago, related to the EST training, someone stood up and shared how they had changed from this EST training. And Werner Erhard said, "No, you haven't changed." And they repeated, "Yes, I've changed. I know I've changed." And he said, "No, you haven't changed." And his point was, we've all been indoctrinated by the domination thought system of the Taliban, all of us. That changed us. When we practice empathy circles, we come back to our 0 step, natural selves. We've come back to who we really are in this empathy circle. We weren't all changed into the dominant thought system. Now we're unchanged, back to the 0 step, back to our natural selves. And we want to share that. Thank you all.
Thank you, Larry. Kathy.
So I'm bringing this to the Peace Alliance. And I also had this thought that I could post on Facebook that I'm doing an empathy cafe and let people come to it and get people to know it in that way. So that might be a fun thing for me to do, I'm thinking, because I want to have fun with this. And then generosity is the word that keeps coming to me. Generosity is the foundation of this. And Edwin, that started with you, and then all the other people who came on board are helping create this. There's a generosity here that infuses all of this. So, and I think that's contagious because I want to be generous also. So, and Lou, your generosity, Edwin, your generosity, I feel very contributed to, and it's hard for me to receive. So this has been a really good practice for me. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Kathy. Dominic.
Thanks, Bill. I'm definitely going to continue helping with the training. Maybe not the next one logistically, but after. Related to what Michelle and Joelle and Larry said about the trauma-informed counseling skills, I'm going to continue to employ these skills in my other volunteer job as a crisis counselor. And I will continue to think about what Edwin brought up today in our group about like the therapist-client relationship is not as mutual as it could be, maybe. You know, it's more one-sided. So I thought that was a really insightful point that Edwin brought up. And as an aspiring psychologist, I want to kind of wrestle with that and think more about that. So thanks.
Thank you, Dominic. Ralph. Ralph, you're mute. There we go.
My cat is a great teacher of empathy. He's picking up on the vibes. I think if my count is right, this gathering is a jewel with 18 facets, and I resonate with each one of them. I pay a little different emphasis going forward because of my particular situation. I'm a harm reduction specialist. I think one of you talked about going to the people who are the most forgotten and unreachable, and I do this every day. And I talk to people with great delusions and clouded by drugs and fear and hunger and so on. And this is one of the tickets that I've adopted. I don't have other than that, I don't have a big program, but I am working with a friend of mine who is a psychologist who does behavioral therapy with, again, people that therapists try to avoid. There's one person in a group of his that just jumps up randomly and just bites people. And how can we break down this process, and I hear, and so on and so forth, and reach people who are thought to be unreachable. And I continue to talk to the politicians that are running for mayor here and their political operatives. My excuse is kind of, I'm doing some homework. I use that a lot, Edwin. I have can you help me with my homework? And in the course of writing an article, and they all want to be included in the article, practicing this this work. But the fact is that when I'm not empathic, when I'm not open, when I don't try to create a space of mutuality, I just feel crazy, and that makes me embarrassed and ashamed of myself. So I'm more and more naturally honing into being. Oh, I like the idea of there's no way to empathy. Empathy is the way. So wanting to be empathy.
Thanks, Ralph. Okay. Well, I plan to continue with these trainings. I'm enjoying it, and each one of you very much. I'm also working on trying to get empathy into schools because I think that if kids practice this is where real change could be made. And I won't say I have my fire story, kind of like I was doing, but what I noticed about empathy is that 3 strangers came together, didn't know each other, and we banded together and effectively prevented a fire from spreading to a house. And there was actually a cat in there, like yours there, Ralph. And so the cat is okay. And so with all of the things that are going on that are so difficult in our lives, and the Taliban in Afghanistan, there's also a tremendous capacity for empathy, and it doesn't take much to bring that out. That's who we are. And I think Larry talked about that. So thank you all, and I'll give it off to Edwin.
Okay. Yeah, for me, it's holding that vision ongoing for a culture of empathy and just keep working towards it. The Empathy Circle is kind of the first one step, and this training. And for me, it's just a matter of keep iterating. I keep looking for the opportunities to make that a reality. I'm constantly reevaluating, trying different things. Let's try this, let's try that, and just try to see what has the most impact. And I just love this training. It was really initially designed by the foundation by Bill and Lou, and it's just been amazing. So thanks everyone for taking part.
Now I'm passing to
sorry.
I just want to recognize time, and also Anne is going to be doing the closing, and then
So the first part of our closing this evening, and the last couple of minutes, will be any further comments, any final comments from trainers, please. Edwin.
I have a quick one. Is we have this is the last for this cohort. I'm going to put the link in for the next cohort real quick here. Oops. And it's going to be starting September 20th. And that's going to be cohort 13C. And there's the link. So just get a quick hands up. Who's interested in being able to take part in that? Just get a, and oh, that'd be great. Yeah. And there's a link is there. You can actually go and sign up now. You know, kind of if you're wanting to take a trainee role or whatever role, you can fill that out. So great. Hope to see you there. That's it for me.
So
And Lou?
I had two things I wanted to say. So one is I run an Empathy Facilitator support group every other Friday. This is a way of providing ongoing support for Empathy Circle facilitators that want to continue their learning and bring, you know, situations that they are facing or problems that they want to talk about. It's every other Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, and it's in my Zoom room. The link is on the Empathy Circle Facebook page, and also I post a reminder to the Empathy Circle development list, and I think it'll be put on this list as a result of being in this training. The other thing I wanted to mention was, in terms of your own Empathy Circle facilitating, something that happens for me when I'm learning something new is the perfectionist in me says, well, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. I need to learn a little more. I'm not quite there yet. I have to learn more. So I never feel ready. And the way that I get around that is I trick myself by saying, I'm ready enough. So I'm not ready, but I might be ready enough to start. And so for those perfectionists in the group who feel like they always have to learn more, that's a trick that you can use.
Any other facilitator, any other trainers, anything they would like to add? And I think that Edwin's going to be putting into the chat the link to the feedback, the final feedback for the cohort. And also the link, because there will be more introductory cafes. So please, can you spread the word amongst your networks? And I'm sure that those links will be in your emails as well. But please pass it out to your friends, and you'll have allies to do your facilitation with.
Just a quick thing, I put in the chat my Empathy in School thing, if you're interested. That's all. Thanks.
Right, thank you. So I think that's all. I can't see any other trainers with it. So let's just review what we've done in this final session. We held our final Empathy Cafe for this cohort 13B. And our focus was on integrating our experiences and our learnings. And then we've harvested feedback about the benefits of the training. And we've also shared our intentions with one another about what we're going to do with hosting empathy circles or contributing to building a culture of empathy. So 2 things left to do. One is, please, would you post in the chat now one feeling that you have as a result of being here today. One feeling, please. And also, after you've done that, give you a moment, we'll do our final jazz hands portrait. And thank you all very much. So, Edwin, are you ready to do the portrait?
Oh yeah, let's do the jazz hands and our final jazz hands for this cohort. Yay! See you next time. And the Friday we have our cafe as well. Join us there. You can.
Well done, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.
The facilitators, trainers would like to hold back for our debrief, please.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, Sally.
Bye.
Bye, Cynthia.
Bye.